Part 1. The space station called Harmony Point hung in the darkness between stars. It was a massive structure made of metal and glass, spinning slowly to create gravity for the thousands of beings who lived and worked inside. Ships from hundreds of different worlds docked at its ports every day. Some brought traders selling strange goods. Others carried diplomats working on peace treaties. A few held tourists who wanted to see the famous neutral meeting place where so many species came together. Jake Morrison walked through the main marketplace on level 7. He wore the dark blue uniform of Earth's Diplomatic Security Service. The uniform was simple but well made, with a small patch on his shoulder showing the symbol of humanity. Jake was tall for a human, with short brown hair and sharp gray eyes that never stopped moving. He had served in Earth's military for 8 years before joining the diplomatic corps. Old habits died hard, and he still walked like a soldier, always aware of his surroundings. Today, the station was more crowded than usual. The Kelmar species had just signed a major peace treaty with their longtime rivals, the Thox Collective. Celebrations filled every corridor and plaza. Musicians played instruments that made sounds Jake had never heard before. Vendors shouted in dozens of languages trying to sell food, jewelry, and trinkets. The air smelled like a mixture of spices, ozone, and something sweet that Jake could not identify. Jake was not here for the party. His job was to watch and protect. He made sure that Earth's small delegation stayed safe during the festivities. His partner, Amy Collins, was upstairs keeping an eye on Ambassador Stevens and his staff. Jake had volunteered to patrol the lower levels where the crowds were thickest. As he walked past a fountain made of some kind of glowing crystal, something caught his attention. It was not a sound or a smell. It was just a feeling, an instinct that whispered in the back of his mind. Something was wrong. He stopped and pretended to look at a nearby stall selling what appeared to be fruits from the Kelmar homeworld. While he examined a purple oval fruit, his eyes scanned the area around the fountain. There, a child stood alone near the fountain's edge. She was small, maybe the size of a 7-year-old human girl. Her skin was pale blue, smooth like porcelain. Large violet eyes dominated her delicate face. 2 small ridges ran along the sides of her head where humans would have ears. She wore a simple white dress with silver patterns that seemed to shimmer when she moved. In her tiny hands, she clutched a toy that looked like a small stuffed animal with too many legs. Jake recognized her species immediately. She was Vexian, one of the older races in the galactic community. The Vexians were known for their skill in mathematics and engineering. They had helped build many of the great space stations scattered across known space, including this one. But something about this child bothered Jake. She stood very still, too still for a young child surrounded by so much noise and color. Her big eyes kept darting toward a group of beings standing about 20 feet away. Every few seconds she would glance at them, then quickly look away. Her small body was tense like an animal ready to run. Jake followed her gaze to the group. There were 4 of them, all Mordaxians. The Mordaxians were a species that looked somewhat like Earth's reptiles. They had dark green scales that caught the light, tall, thin bodies, and long fingers with sharp nails. Their faces were flat with small noses and wide mouths. These 4 wore expensive-looking robes in deep red and gold colors. Traders, probably, or businessmen. At first glance, there was nothing unusual about them. They talked among themselves in low voices. They looked at displays on their datapads. They sipped drinks from tall glasses. But Jake noticed something that made his stomach tighten. Every so often, one of them would look at the little Vexian girl. Just a quick glance, casual, as if checking to see if she was still there. Then they would look away and continue their conversation. Jake had seen this pattern before. During his military service, he had trained with intelligence officers who taught him how to spot surveillance techniques. What he was watching looked exactly like a surveillance pattern. The Mordaxians were keeping track of the girl without making it obvious. He moved closer, pretending to be interested in another vendor's stall. This one sold scarves made from a material that changed colors based on the wearer's body temperature. Jake picked one up and held it while watching the scene near the fountain. The little girl shifted her weight from one foot to the other. She looked around as if searching for someone. Her violet eyes were wide and frightened. Jake could see her hands trembling as she held her toy tighter. Why was she alone? Vexian families were known for being very protective of their children. The Vexian delegation was on the station for the peace celebrations. Their quarters were on the upper levels, far from this crowded marketplace. A child this young should not be wandering around by herself. Jake's instincts screamed at him that something was very wrong. But what could he do? He had no proof of any crime. The Mordaxians had not done anything illegal that he could see. They were just standing there, talking and drinking. The girl was not being threatened or attacked. She was just standing alone, looking scared. Maybe her parents were nearby. Maybe she had just wandered away for a moment and was waiting for them to find her. Maybe the Mordaxians were not watching her at all, and Jake was just being paranoid. But Jake had learned to trust his instincts. Those instincts had kept him alive through 3 combat deployments and countless dangerous situations. When something felt wrong, it usually was wrong. He touched the communicator in his ear. It connected him to Amy Collins on the upper level. He spoke quietly, knowing the device would pick up his voice even in the noisy marketplace. "Amy, I need you to check something for me. Is there a Vexian child registered as missing or separated from parents?" There was a brief pause, then Amy's voice came through clear and professional. "Checking now. What have you got?" "Maybe nothing," Jake said. "But I want to be sure. Little Vexian girl, about 7 years old in human terms, pale blue skin, white dress with silver patterns. She is alone on level 7 near the main fountain plaza. She looks scared." "Stand by," Amy said. Jake waited, keeping his eyes on the scene. One of the Mordaxians said something to the others. They all nodded. Then one of them started walking slowly toward the fountain, toward the little girl. Jake's hand moved instinctively toward his weapon, then stopped. He forced himself to stay calm and watch. The Mordaxian walked past the girl without even looking at her. He went to a drink vendor and ordered something. False alarm, maybe. But then Jake noticed that the Mordaxian had positioned himself on the other side of the fountain. Now the girl was surrounded. 2 Mordaxians on one side, 2 on the other, with the fountain in the middle. It could be a coincidence. But Jake did not believe in coincidences. Amy's voice came back through his earpiece. "Jake, I have something. Ambassador Quinn of the Vexian delegation reported his daughter missing about 20 minutes ago. Station security is searching for her. Her name is Lyra. Description matches what you gave me." Jake's jaw tightened. There it was. Not paranoia, not imagination. "A real threat, I found her," he said quietly, "and I think she is in danger." Part 2. Jake kept his position near the vendor stall, watching carefully. He knew he had to be smart about this. If he rushed in without understanding the situation, he could make things worse. The Mordaxians had not actually done anything yet. They were just standing in a public place. If Jake confronted them without proof, it could cause a diplomatic incident. Earth was still new to the galactic community. They could not afford to offend other species without very good reasons, but that little girl was in danger. Every instinct Jake had developed over years of training told him so. He just needed to figure out what the Mordaxians were planning and stop it before they could act. "Amy, contact Ambassador Quinn," Jake said into his communicator. "Tell him I have eyes on his daughter. Tell him not to rush down here with security. If these people see an official response, they might panic and do something desperate. I will keep her safe until we understand what is happening." "Understood," Amy replied. "But Jake, be careful. The Mordaxians have strong connections in the Galactic Trade Network. If you are wrong about this, I know," Jake said. "Just trust me." He moved to a different position, this time near a pillar that gave him a better view of all 4 Mordaxians and the girl. Lyra had not moved from her spot by the fountain. She still clutched her toy and looked around with frightened eyes. Jake wondered how she had gotten separated from her parents in the first place. Had she wandered off on her own, or had someone led her away? 10 minutes passed. The marketplace stayed busy with celebration traffic. Beings of all shapes and sizes walked past the fountain, laughing and talking. None of them seemed to notice the scared little girl or the Mordaxians watching her. It frustrated Jake. How could so many people walk right past a child in obvious distress and not see it? But then he remembered his training. Different species evolved in different ways. They had different instincts and different ways of recognizing danger. Humans had spent millions of years as hunters on Earth. They learned to read body language and spot patterns in behavior. They could tell when prey was injured or when a predator was stalking. Those ancient skills were still buried deep in human brains. Other species had different abilities. The Kelmar could smell fear through chemical signals. The Thox could sense electrical fields in living beings. The The Vexians themselves had limited telepathic abilities that let them share emotions with other Vexians. Each species had its own way of understanding the world, but what Jake was seeing now was a very human kind of threat. It was predatory behavior, the careful stalking and positioning that a hunter used before striking. Most alien species would not recognize it because their predators did not hunt this way. To them, the Mordaxians just looked like traitors standing around. They could not see the pattern that screamed danger to Jake's human eyes. One of the Mordaxians pulled out a datapad and looked at it. He showed something on the screen to his companions. They all nodded. Then the one closest to Lyra started walking toward her. Jake tensed, ready to move. But he forced himself to wait and watch. He needed to see what they would do. The Mordaxian stopped a few feet from Lyra. He smiled, showing rows of small, pointed teeth. He said something to her in a language Jake did not understand. Lyra shrank back, pressing against the fountain's edge. She shook her head. The Mordaxian spoke again, his voice gentle and friendly. He reached into his robe and pulled out something small and colorful. Candy maybe, or some kind of treat. He held it out to Lyra. Jake's hand moved to his weapon. This was a classic grooming technique. Predators who targeted children often used treats and friendly words to gain trust, build comfort, create false security, then lead the victim away from safety. Jake had seen it before on Earth. It looked like the same pattern worked across species. Lyra looked at the candy. She was clearly tempted. She was just a child scared and alone. The Mordaxian seemed friendly. He was offering her something nice. Why not trust him? Jake started moving closer, ready to intervene. But then Lyra surprised him. She shook her head again and backed away from the Mordaxian. Good girl, Jake thought. Trust your instincts. The Mordaxian's smile faded slightly. He said something else, more insistent now. He gestured toward one of the corridors that led away from the main plaza. He seemed to be telling Lyra that her parents were that way, that he would take her to them. Lyra hesitated. Jake could see her struggling with the decision. She wanted to believe the Mordaxian. She wanted to find her parents. But something held her back. Then another Mordaxian joined the first one. This one was female, Jake thought, though it was hard to tell with their species. She knelt down to Lyra's level and spoke in a soft, motherly voice. She smiled and reached out a hand. Jake saw Lyra start to relax. Two of them working together was more convincing than one. The female Mordaxian seemed so kind, so concerned. Surely she would not hurt a child. Lyra took a small step toward them. Jake could not wait any longer. He walked quickly across the plaza, weaving between other pedestrians. He kept his face calm and friendly, not wanting to alarm anyone. As he approached, he called out in a cheerful voice, "Lyra! There you are." All three of them turned to look at him. The two Mordaxians' expressions hardened for just a moment, before returning to pleasant smiles. Lyra looked confused. She did not know who Jake was. Jake stopped a few feet away and smiled at the little girl. "Your father sent me to find you. He was very worried." He looked at the two Mordaxians. "Thank you for keeping her safe. I will take her back to her family now." The male Mordaxian stepped forward. "We were just about to escort her ourselves. Her parents are waiting in the administrative corridor. We know the way." "That is very kind," Jake said, still smiling. "But I have direct orders from Ambassador Quinn to bring her to him personally." "I am sure you understand. Security protocols." The Mordaxians exchanged glances. Jake could feel the tension rising. The other two Mordaxians had stopped their casual wandering and were now watching the scene with focused attention. "Perhaps we should all go together," the female Mordaxian suggested. "The station can be confusing. 4 eyes are better than 2, yes?" Jake's smile never wavered, but his hand drifted closer to his weapon. "I appreciate the offer, but I have this handled. Lyra, come with me, please." He held out his hand to the little girl. She looked at his hand, then at the Mordaxians, then back at Jake. Her large violet eyes were filled with confusion and fear. She did not know who to trust. Jake knelt down so he was at her eye level. He kept his voice gentle and calm. "Lyra, my name is Jake. I work with your father. He is very worried about you. I promise I will take you straight to him. You are safe now." Something in Jake's voice or his expression must have convinced her. Maybe it was the genuine concern in his eyes. Maybe it was just luck. But Lyra took a tentative step toward him and placed her small blue hand in his larger human one. Relief flooded through Jake. He stood up, keeping Lyra's hand in his, and nodded politely to the Mordaxians. Thank you again for your concern. Have a pleasant evening." He turned and started walking away, gently leading Lyra with him. He kept his pace casual, not rushing, not showing any sign of alarm. Just a security officer escorting a lost child back to her parents. But he could feel the Mordaxians watching him. He could sense their anger and frustration even without looking back. And when he had gone about 20 feet, he heard footsteps behind him. They were following. Jake's jaw tightened. This was not over. Not by a long shot. He activated his communicator. "Amy, I have the package. But we have company. 4 Mordaxians tailing me. I am heading toward the security checkpoint at Corridor Junction 12. Meet me there with backup." "On my way," Amy's voice came back immediately. Jake looked down at Lyra and gave her what he hoped was a reassuring smile. "Everything is going to be fine. Just stay close to me." Lyra nodded, but her hand squeezed his tighter. She could feel the tension too. Smart kid. The footsteps behind them grew closer. Jake calculated distances and angles in his head. The security checkpoint was still 200 yards away. The Mordaxians were gaining, and the crowd was thinning as they moved into a less busy section of the station. This was about to get very complicated. Part 3. Jake kept walking at a steady pace, his hand holding Lyra's small fingers gently but firmly. The corridor ahead curved slightly to the left. The walls here were plain metal painted in soft gray colors, with strips of blue light running along the ceiling for guidance. The celebration sounds from the marketplace faded behind them. This section of the station was quieter, used mainly for cargo transport and maintenance access. The footsteps behind them grew louder. Jake glanced back and saw all 4 Mordaxians following at a distance of about 30 feet. They were not trying to hide anymore. Their faces showed cold determination. Whatever they had planned for Lyra, they were not willing to give up easily. Jake's mind raced through his options. He could not run while holding a small child. Even if he picked her up and carried her, the Mordaxians had longer legs and could probably catch up. He could call for an emergency security response, but that would take several minutes. Station security was spread thin because of the celebrations. The nearest checkpoint was still 150 yards ahead. He could fight if he had to. He was armed and trained, but there were 4 of them and 1 of him. And he had to protect Lyra at the same time. If shooting started, she could get hurt. That was not acceptable. "Lyra," he said quietly, keeping his voice calm, "I need you to be very brave for me. Can you do that?" The little girl looked up at him and nodded. Her violet eyes were wide with fear, but she was holding herself together. Tough kid, Jake thought with approval. "Good. No matter what happens, you stay behind me. If I tell you to run, you run as fast as you can toward any adults you see and yell for help. Understand?" "Yes," Lyra whispered in her small voice. One of the Mordaxians called out from behind them. "Human, stop! We need to speak with you." Jake did not stop. He did not even slow down. He just kept walking toward the checkpoint, his eyes scanning for any advantage he could use. "I said stop." The voice was angry now. The footsteps behind them broke into a run. Jake spun around, putting himself between Lyra and the approaching Mordaxians. His hand moved to his weapon, a compact energy pistol in a holster on his belt. He did not draw it yet, but his fingers rested on the grip in clear warning. The 4 Mordaxians stopped about 10 feet away. This close, Jake could see them more clearly. Their scales were dark green with lighter patterns like camouflage. Their eyes were yellow with vertical slits for pupils. They wore expensive robes that marked them as wealthy traders or merchants. Respectable members of society. No one would suspect them of anything wrong. The leader, the male who had first approached Lyra, stepped forward. His face showed anger barely controlled. "You are making a serious mistake, human. That child belongs with us. We have legal custody." Jake kept his voice level and professional. "Legal custody? Then you will not mind explaining that to station security and Ambassador Quinn. I am taking her to her father right now. You are welcome to follow us there and present your documentation." "We have no time for bureaucratic delays," the female Mordaxian said. She moved to the side, trying to circle around Jake. The other 2 spread out as well, surrounding him from 3 directions. Classic pack tactics. "Give us the child now." Jake drew his weapon in one smooth motion. He did not point it at anyone specifically, just held it ready at his side. "That is not going to happen. Back away. Now." The Mordaxians hissed, a sound like steam escaping from a valve. Their hands moved inside their robes. Jake knew they were reaching for weapons of their own. This was about to turn into a firefight in a civilian corridor with a child right behind him. Then a voice called out from down the corridor. "Security!" Everyone freeze. Amy Collins appeared from a side passage, her own weapon drawn and pointed at the Mordaxians. Behind her came two station security officers, both members of the Kelmar species. The Kelmar were tall beings covered in short brown fur, with long snouts and sharp teeth. They carried heavy stun rifles. The Mordaxians froze, their hands still inside their robes. The leader's yellow eyes darted between Jake, Amy, and the security officers. He was calculating odds and not liking what he found. "Hands out where we can see them," one of the Kelmar officers ordered in a deep, growling voice. Slowly, the Mordaxians reluctantly pulled their hands out of their robes. 3 of them were empty-handed, but the 4th, one of the males Jake had not interacted with before, held a small device that looked like a scanner or tracker. Amy moved closer, her weapon never wavering. "What is that?" The Mordaxian holding the device said nothing. His face was carefully blank. The Kelmar security officer stepped forward and took the device. He examined it with his large clawed hands. His snout wrinkled as he studied the screen. "This is a biological tracker. It is keyed to Vexian DNA signatures." He looked at the Mordaxians with suspicion in his dark eyes. "Why would traders need a device like this?" "Our business is our own," the leader said coldly. "We have broken no laws." "Following a child through station corridors seems pretty suspicious to me," Amy said. She looked at Jake. "Is the package secure?" Jake glanced down at Lyra, who was pressed against his leg, her small body trembling. "She is scared but unharmed. We need to get her to her father immediately." "Agreed," Amy said. She looked at the Kelmar officers. "These 4 need to be detained for questioning. Attempted abduction of a diplomatic family member at minimum." The lead Mordaxian's eyes flashed with anger. "You have no proof of any crime. We were simply walking in the same corridor. We have done nothing to the child." "This is harassment based on species prejudice." It was a smart argument, Jake had to admit. On the surface, the Mordaxians had done nothing illegal. They had offered Lyra candy and tried to talk to her, but talking to children was not a crime. They had followed Jake through the corridors, but walking in public spaces was not illegal either. Even the biological tracker could be explained as a tool for legitimate business purposes. Without proof of actual intent to kidnap, the station authorities could not hold them. And in the complicated world of interspecies politics, accusing respected traders of child abduction without solid evidence could cause serious problems for Earth's diplomatic relationships. The Kelmar officers seemed to realize this too. They exchanged uncertain glances. One of them spoke into a communicator on his wrist, calling for instructions from his superiors. Jake felt frustration building in his chest. He knew what he had seen. He knew the Mordaxians had been stalking Lyra, planning to take her somewhere. But knowing something and proving it were 2 different things. Then a new voice called out from further down the corridor. "Let me through. My daughter." "Where is my daughter?" A Vexian male came running toward them. He was tall for his species, maybe 5.5 feet, with pale blue skin similar to Lyra's but darker. He wore formal robes in deep purple with silver trim, marking him as a high-ranking diplomat. His violet eyes were wild with worry. "Papa!" Lyra cried out. She pulled free from Jake's hand and ran to her father. The Vexian man dropped to his knees and caught his daughter in his arms. He held her tight, his whole body shaking. Tears ran down his face as he checked her over, making sure she was not hurt. Jake watched the reunion and felt some of his tension ease. Whatever else happened, at least the child was safe with her father now. The Vexian man stood up, holding Lyra in his arms. He looked at Jake with an expression of profound gratitude. "You are the human who found her." "Thank you. Thank you so much, Ambassador Quinn," Jake said with a nod. "I am glad we found her in time." Quinn's expression changed as he looked past Jake to the 4 Mordaxians. His eyes narrowed. Something like recognition showed on his face. I know you. You are Vax, are you not? The traitor?" The lead Mordaxian, apparently named Vax, said nothing. His face remained carefully neutral. "Your company has been trying to negotiate shipping contracts with my government for months," Quinn continued. His voice grew harder. "Every time we refuse, you ask again with better offers." "Too good to be true," some of my advisors said. Now my daughter goes missing during a public celebration, and I find you here. Coincidence? Vax's expression finally changed. A hint of worry crossed his features before he controlled it. I have no idea what you are implying, Ambassador. We were simply— You were tracking her, Jake interrupted. He pointed at the device in the Kelmar officer's hands. That tracker was locked onto Vexian DNA, specifically onto her, I would bet. Amy picked up the thread. And you positioned yourselves around her in a classic capture formation. You were going to take her to one of the private docking bays, were you not? Maybe hold her until her father agreed to your trade contracts. The pieces were falling into place now. Not random child predators, but corporate criminals using leverage. Take the ambassador's daughter, then offer to return her safely in exchange for favorable business deals. It was cold, calculated, and apparently more common in galactic society than Jake wanted to think about. These are serious accusations, one of the other Mordaxians said. Do you have any actual evidence? That was the problem. They still did not. Everything Jake and Amy had said was logical deduction, but it was not proof. The Mordaxians could claim the tracker was for inventory management. They could say they were just walking through corridors. Without catching them in the actual act of abduction, the case was weak. Part 4. Everything happened fast. The quiet Mordaxian pulled a small weapon from his robes, a device that looked like a metal tube with a glowing blue tip. He pointed it not at the security officers or at Jake, but at Ambassador Quinn and Lyra. Jake's body reacted before his mind finished processing the threat. Years of combat training took over. He lunged forward, crossing the distance between himself and Quinn in 3 quick steps. His shoulder slammed into the ambassador's side, pushing both him and Lyra toward the floor and out of the line of fire. A bright blue beam shot from the Mordaxian's weapon, passing through the space where Quinn had been standing a split second before. The beam hit the wall and left a glowing scorch mark on the metal surface. Amy and the Kelmar security officers opened fire immediately. Stun beams filled the corridor with flashing light and crackling energy. The quiet Mordaxian dropped his weapon and collapsed as multiple stun charges hit him at once. The other 3 Mordaxians tried to run, but they did not get far. More stun beams brought them down one by one. Within seconds, all 4 of them lay unconscious on the floor. Jake pushed himself up and checked on Quinn and Lyra. Are you hurt? Quinn was breathing hard, his eyes wide with shock. But he shook his head. No, we are unharmed. You saved our lives. He clutched Lyra tighter. The little girl was crying now, scared by the sudden violence. More security officers arrived, drawn by the sound of weapons fire. They quickly secured the unconscious Mordaxians, putting restraints on their wrists and ankles. A medical team appeared moments later to check everyone for injuries. Amy walked over to Jake and offered him a hand up. Nice reflexes. Old habits, Jake said, accepting her help and getting to his feet. His shoulder hurt where he had slammed into Quinn, but it was nothing serious, just a bruise. One of the Kelmar officers picked up the weapon the Mordaxian had dropped. He examined it carefully, his furry face grim. This is a plasma pistol. Military grade, highly illegal on the station. He looked at his partner. They were serious. This was not just about business leverage. They were willing to kill. That changed everything. Attempted murder of a diplomat was a major crime, one that could not be dismissed or explained away. The Mordaxians would face serious charges now, probably years in detention. A human woman in a gray uniform approached the group. She was older than Jake, maybe 50 years old with short blonde hair going gray at the temples. She had the bearing of someone used to command. I am Captain Helen Wright, head of station security. Someone want to tell me what happened here? Over the next few minutes, Jake and Amy explained the situation. Captain Wright listened carefully, asking pointed questions and taking notes on a data pad. Ambassador Quinn added his own observations, describing how his daughter had gone missing and the history of unwanted contact from the Mordaxian trading company. When they finished, Wright looked at the unconscious Mordaxians with disgust. We have been hearing rumors about this kind of thing for months. Children of diplomatic families going missing during large gatherings, then mysteriously reappearing a few hours later. The families never reported officially because the children are returned unharmed, but we suspected someone was using kidnapping as leverage for business deals or political pressure. Why did no one see it before? Amy asked. Jake spotted the threat pattern immediately. Wright shrugged. Different species, different threat recognition. Most of the security staff are Kelmar or Thox. They rely on scent and electrical field detection. This kind of visual stalking behavior does not register the same way for them. We have been trying to get more humans on the security team for this exact reason. But Earth is still new to the galactic community. We do not have many humans available yet. Jake looked at the Mordaxians being carried away by medical staff, still unconscious. Will they talk? Tell you about their organization? They will, Wright said with confidence. We have telepaths on staff who can question them once they wake up. If they are part of a larger criminal network, we will find out. Ambassador Quinn approached Jake and Amy. Lyra was still in his arms, her small face pressed against his shoulder. The ambassador's expression was solemn. I owe you both my daughter's life, but you especially, Jake Morrison. He looked Jake in the eyes. You saw danger when no one else did. Why? Jake thought about how to explain it. Humans evolved as hunters. We learned to read body language and spot patterns in behavior. When I saw those Mordaxians watching Lyra, their positioning and timing felt wrong, like predators stalking prey. It was just instinct. Remarkable, Quinn said softly. Your species' unique perspective saved my child. I will not forget this. Phexia will not forget this. Over the next hour, station security took detailed statements from everyone involved. Jake had to describe his observations multiple times, walking the investigators through exactly what he had seen and why it had concerned him. They seemed fascinated by his explanation of human threat recognition instincts. Finally, Captain Wright dismissed them. You are free to go. We will contact you if we need any follow-up information. And Morrison? Good work today. Really good work. Jake nodded his thanks. He and Amy made their way back toward their assigned quarters on the diplomatic level. The celebrations were still going on in other parts of the station, but Jake felt exhausted. The adrenaline from the confrontation was wearing off, leaving him tired and sore. You could have gotten killed, Amy said as they walked. Jumping in front of that weapon like that. Could not let them shoot a kid, Jake replied simply. No, you could not, Amy agreed with a slight smile. That is why you are good at this job. You care. They rode a lift up to level 12, where Earth's diplomatic quarters were located. Ambassador Stevens met them at the door, having been briefed on the situation by Captain Wright. He thanked them both for their actions and told them to take the rest of the day off. Jake went to his small room and sat on the bed. He felt restless despite his exhaustion. He kept seeing Lyra's frightened face in his mind. Kept thinking about what would have happened if he had ignored his instincts, if he had walked past that fountain without paying attention. A message notification blinked on his datapad. He picked it up and saw it was from Ambassador Quinn. The message was brief but heartfelt. It thanked Jake again and included an invitation to visit the Vexian homeworld as an honored guest anytime he wished. Attached was a photo of Lyra, smiling and holding her toy, safe at home with her family. Jake smiled and saved the photo. Then he lay back on his bed and closed his eyes. The next morning, Jake was called to a meeting with Captain Wright and several high-ranking station officials. When he arrived at the conference room, he found it full of people from various species, all looking serious. Wright stood at the head of a long table. Morrison, thank you for coming. We have been interviewing the Mordaxians you helped capture yesterday. They have given us valuable information about a much larger criminal organization operating across multiple systems. One of the other officials, a tall being made of what looked like living crystal, spoke in a voice like chiming bells. This organization has been kidnapping children from diplomatic families for almost 2 years. They use the children as leverage for business deals, political favors, and other forms of corruption. We estimate they have taken over 30 children during that time. Jake felt sick. 30 children, and he had almost missed the 31st. Thanks to your actions and observations, we now have enough evidence to move against this organization, Wright continued. We are coordinating with law enforcement across a dozen systems. Within the next few days, we expect to make multiple arrests and shut down their entire operation. Another official, this one a Kelmar female with gray fur, leaned forward. But we need your help, Morrison. We need you to train our security staff in human threat recognition techniques. Teach them what you see when you look at suspicious behavior. Help us understand these patterns so we can spot them too. Jake was surprised. I am not a teacher. I am just security. You are exactly what we need, Wright said firmly. You have skills and instincts that other species lack. If you can teach even a fraction of what you know to our multi-species security teams, we can prevent crimes like this before they happen. Will you help us? Jake thought about Lyra's frightened face, thought about 30 other children who had been taken, thought about all the children who might be taken in the future if no one stopped it. Yes, he said, I will help. Part 5. 3 weeks passed since the incident with Lyra. During that time, Jake's life changed in ways he had not expected. He was still part of Earth's diplomatic security team. But now he spent most of his time working with station security as a special consultant and trainer. The job was harder than he expected. Teaching aliens to recognize human-style threat patterns was like trying to explain color to someone who had only ever seen in black and white. Different species literally saw the world differently. Their brains processed information through different filters shaped by millions of years of evolution on different worlds. The Kelmar, for example, relied heavily on scent. They could smell fear, aggression, and dishonesty through chemical signals that humans could not detect. But they had trouble reading facial expressions and body language. When Jake tried to explain how a person's posture could indicate hostile intent, the Kelmar officers struggled to understand what he meant. The Thox were even more different. They sensed the world through electrical fields generated by living beings. They could detect heartbeats and nervous system activity from across a room. But they were nearly blind to visual cues that seemed obvious to Jake, so Jake adapted. He worked with each species individually, trying to find common ground. He used video recordings to show examples of suspicious behavior. He created training scenarios where security officers could practice spotting threats. Slowly, very slowly, they began to understand what he was teaching them. Amy helped with the training program. She was better at explaining things than Jake was, more patient with the students who struggled. Together, they made a good team. One afternoon, Jake was reviewing surveillance footage with a group of mixed-species security officers. The footage showed various crowded areas of the station over the past several days. Jake's job was to point out suspicious patterns that the officers might have missed. There, Jake said, pausing the video. See those 2 Gordian merchants near the food court? Watch their eye movements. They keep looking at that Kelmar child playing by the fountain. A Kelmar officer leaned forward, studying the screen. His name was Court, and he had been one of Jake's most dedicated students. I see them looking. But how do you know this is suspicious? Maybe they just notice a child playing. Watch how often they look, Jake explained. Once every 10 to 15 seconds. That is not casual observation. That is surveillance. They are tracking the child's position while pretending to talk to each other. Court's ears twitched as he thought about this. Tracking. Like hunting. Exactly like hunting, Jake confirmed. Predators track their prey before they strike. These 2 are showing the same pattern. Another officer, a Thox female named Zira, spoke up. Her voice buzzed slightly, translated through a device on her collar. But we checked the electrical signatures of those merchants. They showed normal stress levels. No heightened aggression or fear. How could they be dangerous? Because they are professionals, Amy answered. They have done this before. They know how to control their reactions. That is why visual observation is so important. Body language is harder to fake than internal biological responses. The training session continued for another hour. When it ended, Court approached Jake with a thoughtful expression on his furry face. I have been thinking about what you teach us. It is not just about catching criminals. It is about understanding how different species think and act. Yes, Jake nodded. That is part of it. Every species evolved to survive different challenges. Humans had to avoid predators and hunt prey on Earth. That shaped how our brains work. Your species evolved differently on your world, so you developed different strengths. Neither way is better. They are just different. But together we see more than any single species could alone, Court said thoughtfully. That is the real lesson, Jake smiled. You are learning faster than I expected. Captain Wright appeared in the doorway of the training room. Morris and Collins, can I see you both for a moment? They followed her to a smaller office down the hall. Inside, they found Ambassador Stevens waiting with another man Jake did not recognize. The stranger was human, maybe 60 years old, with gray hair and a sharp, intelligent face. He wore a plain suit with no visible insignia or rank. Jake Morrison, Amy Collins, this is Director Frank Carter from Earth Security Council, Wright said by way of introduction. Carter stood and shook their hands. His grip was firm and professional. I have been reviewing your work here on Harmony Point. Very impressive. You have probably done more to improve interspecies security cooperation in 3 weeks than we have managed in 3 years. Thank you, sir, Jake said cautiously. He could tell this was leading somewhere. Carter got straight to the point. The Security Council wants to expand your training program. We are planning to establish a multi-species security academy, a place where officers from different worlds can learn to work together. We want you two to help run it. Jake and Amy exchanged surprised glances. This was much bigger than teaching a few classes on a space station. The academy would be on Earth, Carter continued. We would bring in students from dozens of species. They would learn human threat recognition techniques, along with methods from other species. The goal is to create security professionals who can think across species boundaries. That is a huge project, Amy said slowly. We are just field operatives. We are not administrators or educators. You are exactly what we need, Ambassador Stevens said. You understand how to communicate across species lines. You have proven you can teach these concepts effectively, and most importantly, you care about doing it right. Carter pulled out a datapad and showed them a proposal. This would be a permanent assignment. Earth government salary, full benefits, housing provided. You would be building something important, something that could save lives across the galaxy. Jake read through the proposal on the screen. It was a generous offer and the work would be meaningful. But it would also mean leaving field work behind, trading action for teaching. He was not sure how he felt about that. Can we think about it? He asked. Of course, Carter said. Take a few days. Discuss it between yourselves. Let me know when you decide. After the meeting, Jake and Amy walked back to their quarters in silence. Finally, Amy spoke. What do you think? I think it is a good opportunity, Jake said honestly. But I am not sure I am the right person for it. Teaching is not really my strength. You have been doing fine these past few weeks, Amy pointed out. The students respect you. They learn from you, and this is a chance to make a real difference. Not just stopping one crime at a time, but preventing thousands of crimes by training better security professionals. Jake could not argue with that logic, but something still bothered him. What if we miss something important while we are sitting in classrooms? What if another Lyra needs help and we are not there to see it? Amy stopped walking and turned to face him. Jake, you cannot save everyone personally, but you can teach others to see what you see. You can multiply your impact by sharing your knowledge. Is that not worth something? That night, Jake could not sleep. He kept thinking about Amy's words. She was right, he knew. One person could only do so much. But training others, teaching them to spot dangers that their own instincts might miss that could save countless lives. He thought about Lyra, safe now with her family. He thought about the other 30 children who had been rescued when the criminal organization was dismantled. He thought about all the future children who would be safer if security forces knew what to look for. The next morning, Jake found Amy at breakfast in the station's cafeteria. She looked as tired as he felt, with dark circles under her green eyes. She had probably spent a sleepless night thinking about the same things. I am in if you are, Jake said without preamble. Amy looked up from her food and smiled. I was hoping you would say that. I already told Director Carter yes, Jake laughed. You were that sure I would agree? I know you, Amy said simply. You want to help people. This is how we can help the most people. 2 months later, Jake stood in front of the newly constructed Interspecies Security Academy on the outskirts of Seattle. The building was modern and impressive, designed to accommodate students from dozens of different species. Each classroom had adjustable environmental controls for temperature, gravity, and atmosphere. The dormitories were similarly adaptable. The first class of students arrived the following week, 20 beings from 12 different species. They came from law enforcement agencies and security services across known space, all eager to learn new techniques for keeping their people safe. Jake was nervous that first day. He stood at the front of the main classroom, looking at the diverse faces watching him expectantly. How could he possibly teach all these different beings to think like humans? But then he remembered what Court had said back on Harmony Point. It was not about making them think like humans. It was about helping them understand different perspectives, teaching them to see the world through another species' eyes, to recognize patterns that their own evolution had not prepared them for. He started with Lyra's story. He described what he had seen that day, how the Mordaxians' behavior had triggered his instincts even though they had not technically done anything wrong yet. He explained how human